Kia ora te whānau, and welcome back to Returning to Wholeness with Catherine Parslight and Blair Styra. I'm so grateful you're here with us as we step into this sacred space of conversation, awakening, and transformation. I feel deeply honored to introduce my co-host for today's journey, Blair Styra. Blair isn't just a speaker, he's a seasoned spiritual channel, a best-selling author, a teacher, and for over 3 decades, the vessel for Tabaash. For so many around the world who feel called to remember who they truly are beyond the limitations of the human story, Blair and Tabaash's teachings have become a steady and compassionate guiding light. Their message is simple but profound. We are not separate from spirit, nor from creation. We are divine beings having a human experience. What makes Blair and Tabaash so relatable is the way they blend spiritual intelligence with human humor and everyday practicality. They meet people where they are, reminding us that awakening isn't about perfection. It's about awareness, evolution, and choosing to show up for your own becoming. Their work is powerful, but also deeply human, which is why so many feel seen, understood, and lifted by their presence. Today, together, we explore energy shift and vibrational evolution and how our inner frequency shapes the reality we live in, soul intelligence, and how life can be understood as a set of energetic equations we are learning to solve with greater awareness. The importance of formal closure, letting go of patterns and stories that no longer hold truth in who we are becoming, mastery of self, and the way consciousness expresses uniquely through each of us. The rising collective consciousness on how our personal growth contributes to the global evolution of humanity, the incoming frequencies of 2026, and the new generations arriving with more light, tuition, and awareness than ever before. And finally, grounded corridor on mental health and the awareness, because true spiritual evolution honors every layer of the human journey. So take a deep breath, soften into your seat, and open your heart. No matter where you are on your path, new, curious, seasoned, or rediscovering, you are welcome here. We invite you to listen, feel, question, and expand with us as we step deeper into returning to wholeness. Now, if this conversation resonates with you, please like, share, follow, and subscribe. It helps this corridor reach more hearts, and you never know whose light you might ignite simply by sharing something that shifted your own. Sometimes one spark is all someone needs to remember who they truly are. Kia ora, Blair. Welcome to the show. It's an honor, a privilege, and always so exciting to have you here with us. How are you?
Catherine, I'm really good. You're so sweet to me. I'm really good. Yeah, it's always an interesting time of the year, as I wouldn't say things are necessarily slowing down, but you can definitely feel a shift of energy as people get into holiday mode, and I think people are just really wanting to go down that road, actually, with the way that the year has been. But no, I'm good, and just really busy with work, and always got lots of plans and ideas for what I want to do in the year to come, which Spirit is encouraging me to do a lot more public events. So I'm going to be organizing some stuff around the country for next year, and obviously some offshore stuff, which I'm got in the pipeline at the moment. But all in all, yeah, I'm really fantastic. Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. And, as we're kind of coming out of a number 9 and into a number 1 year, that's so fitting, isn't it?
Oh, look, it's interesting you say this, because I've been doing a lot of meditation, and I keep getting the concept of everything is a formula, everything is an equation. And what we're doing is that we're moving into different equations, physiologically, emotionally, mentally, etc. And so, the way, a good way of putting it, the numbers are stacking up for us now, as opposed to against us. And it just happened sort of spontaneously. I'm sort of meditating, and all of a sudden I kept seeing all these formulas being presented to me, and fractals and fractions and equations and sacred geometry and all that sort of stuff. And it just sort of appeared. So of course, I've always asked questions. I said, well, this is all about. And they say, oh, you're just seeing the formulas of life as the equations that they actually are. And of course, each equation is a number. And then when you put numbers together, each number is a frequency. And so when you bring in compatible frequencies, then that's where you bring a lot more harmony. And a lot of people have often said, oh, it's weird that I'm seeing double numbers like 10, 10, 11, 11, 12, 12, that sort of stuff like that. And of course, they've asked Tabaash about that. And he just says, it's just vibrations and formulas. And in those vibrations, you have opportunities, basically, which, is what it's all about. So we're looking for new opportunities. We have new formulas, new vibrations, and with all of those new formulas, vibrations, etc., new patterns are emerging. What's being presented to me in my mind's eye is all these formulas, like mathematical formulas and geometrical formulas and sacred geometry and all sorts of things. And when I ask consciousness, well, what's this? And they say, well, you're watching the equations of life, the formulas of life. And they say everything is a formula, and therefore, when it comes down to numerology and mathematics, etc., intelligence is a form of mathematics. Intelligence is formulas, and so you're seeing intelligence being presented to you, and of course, with all the different formulas, they're vibrations, and those vibrations are now equating differently because we're equating differently. So we're a whole new equation. And when we're a whole new equation, then of course that relates physiologically to us, but of course mentally, emotionally, spiritually, etc. And of course, if you stick to the old formula, you're not gonna function. You have to know that this is a time of
Yes.
enormous vibrational evolution, which is establishing within us all these different formulas and frequencies. And so if there's forms of resistance through whatever reasons people have, then of course they're not able to evolve, they're not able to move forth, because we are involved in a higher level of soul intelligence, which is different from our intellectual intelligence. So our soul intelligence is aligned to the God intelligence.
Right.
And so we're being activated into new formulas and new equations that are representative of all these different frequencies that we're receiving from, the earth itself, from our own development, but also from our connection with, um, you know, non-physical frequencies and also non-earthian frequencies as well.
Right.
And it's I mean, this all makes sense to me,
Okay.
because when I got the information that I was being given when I asked that question, it just made complete sense to me. And it reminds me of a meditation I had, many years ago, maybe over 20 years ago. And I found myself just expanding, and I just kept going further and further and further. So I just went with it. And so as I went with it, I could feel a sense of the expandedness of myself. But every time I expanded, I could feel a different frequency. It was if I was stepping into another vibration, another vibration, another it's like the stripes on my shirt here. It's like everything was a different vibration frequency, but I was just going up. And then I got so far, and I was thinking, well, how far is this going to go? Anyway, I got to a place where the best way to describe it is that I was in the middle of the God frequency,
Wow.
and I was experiencing the God frequency, and the energy was literally just consistently transmitting energy all the time. And as
Wow.
it did so, and I was watching this, I could see that every transmission was affecting everything. I could see all the universes, I could see all the planets, I could see people, everything. I just, in that moment, I was just completely aware. And that's what made me think, oh, this is God awareness. So you're just conscious of being everything. But then what I saw was that when these vibrations were emitted, and it literally evolved everything it touched. So as a vibration went through, say Earth, for instance, I could see the evolution of the Earth consciousness. So the energy of the Earth frequency, it went out as well. And then it reflected that in every person on the planet, every little piece of dirt, you name it, everything was just going through. And I just remember looking at this and going, oh yeah, of course. This is how it all works. And then there just became this really powerful blend. And so obviously, let's just say in a way, we've been through this year, we've been touched by light in a greater way. And by being touched by this light, we've turned more lights on within ourselves, but we've activated our soul intelligence within ourselves with more light. And so, for want of a better phrase, we are now more in light of ourselves.
Mm.
So with that, then of course, this energy that we're sending out is of course having an effect on ourselves physiologically, mentally. But because we're part of a collective consciousness, which makes the energy of Earth, then that has an effect on that as well. And there's a lot more people that are experiencing what I've just explained. So therefore, it's changing the formula, changing the equation of what's actually occurring. And so that changes all the systems that we're living our lives by. And if it doesn't change them, then you take certain systems and you're improving them, because you don't always have to shut the door. You can think, oh no, I could just alter my perception of something or do a little bit of rearranging, etc. And this is what we've been doing. And when I look back on 2025, I could just see it. It's so much rearranging that's been occurring. But as we all know, we have to try a few arrangements out before we look at the ones that really benefit us or we feel right about. And because you want to, and this is important, it's all about the positioning. Because the way we position our thoughts, our words, our deeds is how we align with this energy that we are now being presented with. So there's nothing random about anything. In the past, it was, but now we're more conscious beings of light that are more aware of how we're positioning who we are in our mind, body, and spirit. So we don't just see what happens. We stand still and we strategize and we plan and we consider consciously what we choose to do with our vibration. And, I think Tabaash spoke last time we were interviewed about if you're God, you are the power. So therefore, it's just a matter of how do we choose to use the power.
Mm.
And this is definitely a position that I believe that we're in now more consciously. And okay, some people may not use the concept of I am God, but they will use a concept of higher consciousness, understanding that they are the power of that state of consciousness. And that's, I think, what we're heading towards for 2026. It's like, oh, how do I choose to use my power? And okay, yeah, there are still those who will have struggles, but that's not because they haven't got it, but it's just that they haven't got the level of awareness yet so that they can feel that and see that. And of course they will. And of course, invariably, everyone will. And when that happens, then, we'll be in paradise, as they say. But at the moment, it's still that lights are being turned on, humanity coming to a great deal of new realizations within themselves. And then, of course, that changes the way that you observe the world. And, we're just so much more full of light. And one of the things that I think is important as we end this year in light, end this year in a position of greater harmony. Don't end the year saying, oh, thank God this is over. No, I'm glad 2025 is finished, all that type of thing, because it's just a surefire way of keeping the old energy in there. It's like leaving the door open. And one of the things that Spirit's been stressing to me through the years is the importance of knowing when to close off a vibration that you don't need to be influenced, and not just counterproductive stuff, but even productive stuff, because that was productive for then, but not for the new now. So, I think it's been challenging time for everybody, but I think it's also been exciting, and there's a lot of doors that have opened. There's a lot of revelations and realizations that people have come to. But that sense of self-worth and self-responsibility is very, very important, because those are two vibrations that, if we pay attention to, will assist us in this journey in front of us.
Yeah. So how, when you are in a bit of a loop and you are, like you said, something that has worked for you then and now no longer works for you in this new state of consciousness, how do you close that old loop
Mm.
off when
Yes.
you've got a
Yeah.
lot of momentum going but again,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
time to move forward. How do you close that off, Blair?
Mm. Mm. It's actually easier than you think, because we don't have to go through a whole lot of processes and a lot of overthinking or overfeeling or overdoing, or I've got to take some time away so I can sort this out as such. And, the way Tabaash has taught me, it's the importance of just simply, having formal closure on thoughts and attitudes and ideas, etc., that don't serve us. And he's taught a little exercise. People could do this. And he says, write a list of all the things you would like to have formal closure on. And then when you finished your list, sit before a mirror, wave to your human nature and say, oh, hi, it's me, God here. I just want to say that I'm going to have formal closure on all these things I've written. And then you speak it out. You say, I choose to have formal closure on, and then you just read out your list. And as you read out your list, then it's challenging. People feel emotions. People feel that they're drawing out of them the emotions, the vibrations, the energy that isn't necessary anymore. And so some people have, kind of emotional reactions to this. Some people, they can't look at themselves when they're doing it, and which I think is a really essential thing to do. So when you're doing it, don't look at the floor. You're facing yourself, and you're the one who's making the decision about, okay, I'm completing this. So that's a way of doing it. And another simple way, is you just have a little meditation, and then you just say, from the Lord God of my being, I now choose my body and spirit to have total formal closure on all that is no longer necessary, all that is no longer needed, and I return it back to source with great love and gratitude for the opportunities and experiences that I have had. And so that's a simple way. Some people like to do the list thing, some people like to do the other option. So, but it is simple. And, I tend to, every night I have formal closure on the day, every night. And it's like, okay, well, that was that day, that vibration, that frequencies, right? Let's put that down. So you wake up in the morning and you're clear. And that itself is something that I know Spirit is stressing a lot. The teachers, the masters are really stressing about stay clear, and don't harbor the attitudes and ideas and experiences that aren't necessary anymore, because we really don't need those. I mean, this is something I've realized, is how people are so addicted to the past and the energy of the past for whatever reasons. And it's almost like we tend to dip into it without even realizing we're doing it sometimes. Or just little asides that people, have in their life. Oh, I can't do this because, or I'm not quite over that because, and all that sort of stuff. So, when you turn lights on more, then you're choosing to be present. You're choosing to live in your light. And something Tabaash was teaching just recently. I did a event recently here in Wellington, and he was talking about master teachers who've walked this planet, who came here to inspire us and give healing and new formulas, etc., etc. And as he taught, they had mastered themselves to such a degree that they were always of the soul and not of the body. And so when you are always of the soul, then you've always got the alignment with the power of life. And therefore, in their mastery over that, they were able to direct the power of life through the human experience without any form of human interference. And of course, as human beings, we tend to bring a lot of human interference into our thoughts and attitudes and actions. And so, as Tabaash says, we have to know when to, stop poking and prodding at yourself, leave it alone. And obviously, pay attention when it's necessary and when it's natural. But when it's not, then live in mastery over who you are, in your mind, in your body, in your spirit. And so in doing so, then we will get better results. But of course, when people think about mastery, they think about, huge disciplines and things of that nature. But I just think it's living awareness, just being aware of who you are on the day, your thoughts, your feelings. It's the awareness of the relationship you actually have with yourself. And or, as we'll say, yourselves. because of course the more lights we turn on, there's more of us. And so, you know, and I think saying that, I know there's been a huge amount of evolution through this year for everybody, which means that we've actually got more access to more of ourselves than ever before. And I think that's rather exciting to think that we can always be in this new relationship with ourselves. And Tabaash teaches it as being a new version of yourself. And in that new version, you have a different story. And I think that's very, very important for what is in front of us, that we are conscious of those stories. We're conscious of the stories we're creating individually, but conscious of how the combination of those stories changes things. And I've just thought, as I've said that, it's rather like each of us is our own story. But then when we look at it collectively, our story is a chapter in the bigger story. So we're literally adding our chapter into the bigger consciousness, which makes the story of life on Earth. And so if we're more alert and aware to, you know, what chapter are we proposing into the bigger consciousness, then, you know, we want to make sure that we're playing our part in the most productive way possible. And so at the moment, there's still a lot of conflict within individuals, and therefore that reflects itself in conflicts around the world. But that itself is changing too, because, and I'm sure a lot of people will feel this too, I think everything seems rather suspended, and like you could feel that there's new ways that are being established. There's decisions, choices that are being made in a collective way. And the way that I'll just use the analogy of the chapters again, it's rather like there's a lot of editing, you know, that's going on. So everyone's projecting their energy, their chapter, and then in the greater collective consciousness, the higher consciousness is doing a lot of editing, you know, so that we create a better flow of continuity. And I think there's better continuity now because there's been a lot of editing that's done, and editing taking out, you know, major conflicts and doubts and fears and things that have been so all prevailing. And I think people are waiting for, you know, this new edition of life to be presented to them. And let's just hope that next year we all create a bestseller when it comes to the connectivity of humanity. Yeah, I got Tabaash pushing in here, so
I
he'd
could
love to
feel
come
it.
through and talk. Yeah, so I'll pop him through and have a nice time, and I'll talk to you, you know, later on too. So I'll see you soon. Okay, bye-bye.
Sorry.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. It's always lovely to see you. How are you?
I'm very happy to talk. I'll just have a bit of water. Just thinking about numbers, formulas, equations. If you take every year, you know, people have this concept of that was the energy of 2025. This is going to be the energy of 26, etc., etc. We tend to look at the years more like frequencies. So if you think about when you listen to sounds like 369 hertz and 412 hertz and all those sorts of things. So you could say that 2025 is a hertz, it's a frequency. And in that frequency, there's a certain resonance which all beings are aligned to. And so as you move into 2026, you're moving into another frequency. Now, of course, people tend to consider every year there's a beginning of the year and an end of the year. And so I think that's not a good way to look at things. I think that there should just be a road that you're traveling, and as you just travel that road, well, that automatically come to a point where the energy of the road changes from 2025 frequency into 2026, as opposed to, well, that was the end of that, and this is the beginning of that. And that energy of ongoingness is actually very, very important. And why? Because that's how the frequency of God works. That's how source works. It's an ongoing energy. There is never a stop-start frequency. What humans do is they get caught up into the stop-start frequency, which means by doing so, you're not allowing yourself to create a consistency of source flowing through all the time. And so you end up, you know, putting little rooms metaphorically around you where you store your thoughts up and things of that nature, as opposed to the ongoingness of things. And it's that state of consciousness which is very, very, very important. I remember years ago, someone asked in a public meeting about previous incarnations and how many do most people have. And my answer was, well, I said, everybody only has one life, but you're just doing it in lots of bodies. And that's just how it is, you know. But of course, human nature, it's like I'm reborn and I die and all that sort of stuff, you see. But it's just really the ongoingness of energy transfers from one frequency into another frequency. And so all of you are moving into the 2026 frequency. And as you do so, then getting back to what you were doing before about closure, you want to make sure that you close off the frequency of 2025. Even if you have resistance, because it will just keep you locked into that vibration. And because everyone, whether they feel it or not or know it or not, you will have outgrown that vibration. You know, you cannot live in a frequency that's not relevant to the new thoughts and the new frequencies and the new energies and all the ways things are evolving. And so think about this in regards to how diseases work. And diseases come about because there's a conflict of frequencies that are going on based on a lot of mitigating factors. And so when people are in alignment, then you have a better frequency, which brings well-being through you. And so this, you know, whether it's intellectual, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, whatever, you know, if you have any form of dis-ease, disharmony, distress, disturbance within your systems, and then that's because you're not involved in frequencies that are in harmony with you. And so, you know, you don't have to go out there and, you know, Google what's the right frequency to always be in alignment. You know, it's just a matter of, as I teach to people, that, okay, the best thing you could do is just keep affirming your God nature in the way that feels comfortable for you, to be consistent with that, because that's the ultimate frequency. And as you bring the ultimate frequency through you in a consistent manner, then that gives you more awareness, and that allows you to start being more in harmony, more in a balanced position, therefore allowing you to recognize what to do with the power. And so it's that ongoingness. This is where humans are at this point. So you're at the end of this frequency. And I think it's quite a good time for people to look back on the frequency of 2025 and ask of themselves, what was that all about for me? And where do I stand with this now? And don't say things like what went wrong in my year and what I wanted to be better and stuff like that. You're just getting caught up into emotional stuff then. You're making an announcement from your higher consciousness. What was that all about for me? How did I evolve? What ways did I become more empowered? You know, why am I glad that I went through this year? And, you know, I've said this question to some people. I've asked them, and, you know, they always say things like, oh, well, you know, it wasn't that good, actually. And I said, I didn't ask you that. You know, I asked you what was good about it. And everyone can find something. And you know, it's not about, oh, well, I'm grateful for this and all that, but it's about your evolution. You know, what did I do with the frequency of 2025? Did I make it work for me? Or did I allow myself to get pushed around by it? And of course, you know, there's a lot of pushing around that's happening because of the collective changes that are making. But that's a productive thing. That's a powerful thing, because you are evolving, you are advancing your ability to be receptive to more frequency, to more states of consciousness, which now take you into ways of thinking and receptivity that one hasn't been able to do since the times where people were esoteric. And because you are becoming more light beings now, then that's where your belief system about everything being everything is a realization, a revelation. So that's where everyone is now open to all these possibilities that you know are being presented to humanity. And I'm thinking about in you know, the 1900s, and when things like telephones were invented and electricity was created and all that sort of stuff. And to the people of the time, that was frightening. To the people of the time, there were some people, because people weren't so educated, you know, there were people who were terrified to pick up a telephone or to turn a light on, because they didn't have the knowledge, they didn't have the understanding. But then gradually, as things progressed, then the collectivity of humanity progressed intellectually. But, in the 1900s, there were a lot of hugely uneducated people. A lot of people who couldn't read, couldn't write, didn't have awareness in any way. It was very much about survival and living in a whole different limited way, basically. But that's what they believed. And there's so much more hierarchy, that in those days, because you had the aristocracy and you had the very, very poor. And okay, yes, you still have wealth and poor people, but there's a lot more distribution than there was in ancient times, or even in more recent times. So that's where you can get someone who works in a restaurant, or in a coffee bar, who has holidays overseas all the time, and has a great apartment and drives a great car and all that sort of stuff. Whereas people in the 1900s who were in those types of position, they didn't have that. They probably lived in little rooms. They didn't have access to things. It was more like the elite. And of course now, and this is where I think it's really important, there's probably, people need to think about this, there's more equality than there's ever been. Everyone does have access to healthcare. People have more choices. You have clean water and all that type of thing. I always laugh when I look at some of these period dramas that people, create, on the films. And of course, all the actors, in the 17th century, they were looking fantastic, et cetera, et cetera. But in reality, it was completely different because they didn't have the high level of dental care that people have today. Their hygiene standards were disgusting. In those particular days. And, they didn't wash their clothes daily. They didn't they didn't bathe. They didn't shower. That's why they had so many perfumes in those days, because everyone stank, And also think about this. They didn't have indoor plumbing, that type of sanitation and all that sort of stuff. So, but of course the film producers would never show films like that. Everyone is, looking like, 17th century people living 21st century lives. But of course, that's not the case. So here you are, these evolved beings, and I like people to see themselves in that light. See yourselves as an evolved being, but now for you, you're reaching for the stars. And as you reach for the stars, it's the same equivalent to when electricity was first invented, and that was presented to humanity, and people are going like, electricity? But now you see the connection with other forms of life and belief systems and all that sort of stuff. It's the same thing, and people have similar reactions. Some people just don't believe in it, and some people are fearful of it, and so on and so forth. So it's all relevant and relative to the position that you're in. But it goes to show, doesn't it, that it's all about evolution, and people are always reaching for more. So if there's nothing more to reach on Earth, when you start reaching beyond.
Yes.
But of course, to reach beyond, you have to reach within yourself first. And that's where all the information that's being presented through frequencies and energies, like you were talking to Blair earlier before about light language. And of course, that's information that's actually been given from different levels of dimensions and frequencies. And so it's not necessarily about, the words, it's about the frequencies that come with what's actually being given. And of course, it touches people in lots of different ways. And, and it's been quite a lot of it is presenting itself more and more, because it's a way of preparing you all physiologically and mentally for these vibrations and frequencies. So you're literally being downloaded with a vibration that allows the cellular structure of your physiology to be able to be receptive to these vibrations. And it's just a very subtle way of preparing you for so much more. And so, it's never about, suddenly it appears without any form of preparation. And humanity has to be prepared, for change. And it has to be a gradual process. And so all this different information that's being disclosed and the vibrations that are being sent to Earth, the way humanity is receiving different frequencies, different concepts, different states of consciousness, belief systems, etc. This is all preparing you for the acceptance of more, because of course, as it presents itself, then it will change the world. It will change everything. And when it's really obvious, then it's going to alter religions. It's going to alter everything. It's going to alter science, physics, and that has to be done carefully. And so it's a process. And so if you think about like children who are being born now, they are born with this natural awareness. So as old generations get pushed aside and die out, then the new generations present themselves. And a good point to make here is the people who lived at the time in history when the World War II, the Depression, etc., then they were highly influenced in a certain frequency. Now these people are dying out. So as they die out, they're removing the collective consciousness of that particular time in history. So there's no more any interference or influence from those vibrations. And so with these new souls that are being born, they come with more light, they come with more knowledge, they come with more understanding on all levels. And therefore, there's not going to be anything that gets in the way. I mean, there are people now who have absolutely no idea about World War II. Generations who have no concept of it. Or if they think about it, then it's like, oh, well, that's the olden days sort of attitude. And so as far as World War I is concerned, well, then, that's way that you might as well be talking about the American Civil War then. And so, but they just don't buy into the collectivity of that. So as people who have been influenced by people who were connected to those types of situations, then it's like sifting out the energy gradually. So Blair's generation, his parents were born in the 1930s, and so they were brought up still with the influence of what was happening, and of course their parents born in the 1800s, late 1800s, and all that type of. So again, you see, it's a very different block of energy. And so of course now with your generation, children's generation, suddenly it just changes the vibration and frequency. And so there's an alertness, a natural evolution, an advancement of frequency. And so, people who came from the olden days, still have a foot in the door, but the energy they bring is very different. And yet what's important is that each generation learns and evolves from the one previous. And Blair was talking about this to a mate of his, and both of them were born in 1960. So now they're both 65. And Blair said to his mate, "I'm so glad I was born when I was, because it was still a time where there was great respect and hope and less fear, and things were less complex. And so one still lived by good values and principles, and there was family units, there was harmony, there was a sense of eagerness and excitement and adventure. That was okay to some people. Now they could look at it as a form of naivety, but it wasn't. And so that those times are lost. They will never happen again. And so people of his generation, it's like they still have the respect, and they still, Blair still has huge respect for his elders, and he will always open up a door for someone and all that sort of stuff, you see. But a lot of young people, they bowl on in there. They don't give a care about anything. And of course, think about it, living in a time where there was no such thing as cell phones, no such thing as earphones and that type of thing. Blair was looking at a picture of something the other day, and it was people in the 1980s on a street corner, and they're all talking to each other, all chatting away and all that sort of stuff, you see. And then they said people of 2025, and all you see was all these people at the street signs on their phones, looking at the phones. Totally like this. No one was conversing. No one was engaging. Everyone was locked into their little space.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. I always find the analogy. I'll just get Blair's fine here. So this is basically a symbolism. So when people are locked into their phones, it's like they're locked into their box.
Yes.
So this is humanity at the moment. They're locked in into their boxes, you see. So everything about them is in there, and everything
Yeah.
about everyone else is in there. And that and they're not really looking out there for themselves. They're always looking in here. What's it's stored in here? And yeah, funny too, isn't it? Is that even with telephones, you have to keep upgrading,
Yes.
to hold the information.
Yes.
So as human beings, you're no different. You have to keep upgrading yourself to keep storing new information. So you're
And we
getting
have
new
to.
information now, which is why you're all in an upgrade. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're upgrading. You're being upgraded by the collectivity, and as you get upgraded, then it's like getting a new iPhone. You have to just make sure that you bring some of the information that you wanted with it. And but you also have to realize, like, if you want to get rid of this, I got to delete all the information because I don't need to store that information up anywhere else.
Yeah.
And I just find that really a fascinating thing. Sorry, I'm just laughing here because I just remembered something. So somebody has kept a lot of his phones, you see. And so you could say this phone was original version. This was a
Love a
version,
flip
an
phone.
old version of himself. You see, yeah, yeah. And then you had this one. So
Oh.
again, a different version. You know, you know. And then
Yeah.
suddenly everything got a bit more technological. So then you had this version, which is quite small. Like that. And then as time progressed, then you started to bring in a whole lot of other versions. And so to me, this is evolution.
Yeah.
And so, as I said, it's all symbolism, and you're all creating situations to contain yourselves as opposed to be more open. And look, I'm not saying don't use this stuff because you need to, but you just need to remember to look beyond the screen
Mm.
and look at the world, and don't forget to talk to each other. Now, why I say this is because it's even more important now that people do this. This is I'm thinking about 2026 as a formula of engaging. It's a frequency to engage. So when you participate in 2026, it's about participate in your mind, in your body, in your spirit, from the higher consciousness aspect, from being of the soul.
Mm.
So whilst if you participate by being the soul before you are the human, then the power that you have available to you is extraordinary, and it's simple and it's easy, and it's just it's your programming. It's the information that you yourself are presenting, but you're getting more information from the stars, and as you always have had. There's always been, I mean, history is full of evidence about this,
Mm.
in ancient scribes and paintings and sculptures and things of this nature. So science knows this, and they look at this, and anthropologists and archaeologists look at it and all that sort of, and they say, oh, well, we haven't quite figured out what that's all about. I mean, even though it's obvious, well, that's obviously cave painting of a space person, you know, and so, people think of what I said before, that some can't comprehend that,
Mm.
because they think of human nature as having evolved from, being very primordial to being what you are today.
Mm.
But there's been so many different types of esoteric civilizations that have been on this planet, and there's evidence of this in a
Mm.
lot of the archaeological digs that are coming to the front.
Mm.
But of course, a lot of that is hidden because, some archaeologists have based their reputation on their discoveries. And
Mm.
then if something comes out and it says, well, actually, no, that's not true, well, then that means their reputation isn't there anymore. So a lot of it
Mm.
is ego and all that sort of stuff. But you see, all of that changes when there's a lot more evidence and exposure to all the things that are occurring.
Mm.
But it
Mm.
has to be an individual acceptance. You can't just get a whole group of people together and go, oh, by the way, we're having someone from Alpha Centauri come to visit us today. Sorry, I went on a bit of a rant there. Comments, questions?
I feel like we live in little
Mm.
boxes of ignorance, some by choice. And do you think that by putting this information out there, some people would just crumble? Do you think that that's what a lot of the reasoning is behind keeping it,
Mm.
some of it, not all of it, but
Mm.
keeping it
Yeah.
away
Yeah,
from
yeah,
the public
yeah, yeah,
eye?
yeah. Look, that's one reason. I mean, yeah, there's
Yeah.
a phrase, that humans call ignorance is bliss. And
Right.
and so some people don't want to know. They want to stay locked into their little stories which is fine. But then, there's also, it's not in the vested interest of some governments for everyone to know. Why? Because a lot of the information is about, you are the power, and this, you could do this, ways of creating free electricity, free this, free all that sort of stuff. And so, of course, if you think about all the systems that you people live your lives by, well, then, of course, suddenly the gas companies and electrical companies and the pharmaceutical companies and the arms industry and all that sort of stuff, then they just collapse. Because, people getting free energy, and also if everyone's healthy, well, there's no profit in health as far as the pharmaceutical company is concerned. So therefore, as long as they can keep making drugs and keep people sick, then, then they keep making money out of things. And so it's an economical based sort of society. So therefore, it's all around that. And of course, there's such a huge there is a distribution of wealth in a certain way, but there's also a certain amount that well, it's not equal. And so the world has enough money to be able to support everybody. But of course, this is where you're getting into people's egos and the despots, the dictators, the ones who want to rule the world and all that sort of stuff, the politics. So the politics get in the way of balance and harmony in reality. And of course, people put up with that. And but humanity has been finding voices throughout history where, they've revolted against, these rules and systems and things. And but now it's a different sort of revolt. Humanity is having a vibrational revolt.
Yes.
So it's not like the Russian Revolution, it's or the French Revolution type of stuff. Instead, it's more of a vibrational revolution where you're raising your consciousness, so you have awareness and you're remembering. And as you're remembering, suddenly you also remember, oh, we have a voice. And this is what's occurring, which is interesting too, because I find with the way technology is, then that technology is giving people a voice that they never had before.
Yes.
And that works both in productive and counterproductive ways.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, when I say this, I'm thinking, but it is all about your honesty within yourself, and be true to who you are and the way you think and the way you feel, etc. So use it in a way where you're benefiting from it, but don't use it to hurt people.
No.
Don't use it. Look at a lot of people who just want to slag other people off and just can do it anonymously, that word. And so, and people do this,
Yeah.
and so, I mean, to me, this is a time to front up to yourself and just look at the patterns of your life and your thoughts and your words and your deeds, etc. And so, you don't all have to get all Pollyanna on yourself. Be strong and be focused and be clear and be dynamic and be intelligent, but be sensitive and power and sensitive to each other and all that sort of things. And this is the way of the world. This is how it originally was. And this is what you have to be again. And that's what's been established and created so that you can be a part of the greater galactic energies. Once again, be a part of all of that on a conscious level. And it's real. And so, but people have to feel the reality in their own way. And, as they say, just because it might just be in your head doesn't necessarily mean it's not real. Or just because it's in your soul doesn't mean it's not real. A lot of people think because it's in your soul or in your head, then somehow it's not real.
I'm back.
You're back. Okay.
Sorry.
It was funny. I got a frozen version of you on the right. And I got this version of yourself. Actually, that's quite interesting. But of course, it's like, oh, that was the old version of yourself. Now this is a new version of yourself, you see. So, any comments or questions before I go? I'll bring Blair back.
Yes. So there were quite a few. I just have to remember them now. So when we're talking into the new frequency of 2026, which I'm hoping we're going to talk about in January as a collective with a group of other wonderful people that come on the podcast. Tabaash, it looks like it's a year of sovereignty. Is that what we're looking at? Because that's kind of the energy that we've been talking into as well. And integrity, authenticity, sort of bringing all of it in, bringing everything that we kind of learned in this year of what we wanted to close out and bring forward. We get to kind of.
Yeah,
is that what you're?
I think it's very sacred energy, and I'm going to use these words, and this is in a complete non-religious term, and I say everyone's here to be sanctified now, and of course the definition of to be sanctified is to be made holy, Okay, in biblical terms, that means something completely different. In spiritual terms, from our perspective, being sanctified means that you are God,
Yeah.
and that you are, or we'll say you are 100% activated with that vibration. So when you are consciously activated, when you're consciously sanctified, then you've accepted who you are. And when you do that, then you then allow yourself to be the power, and therefore the power is on your hands. But it has to be a careful process,
Yes.
because there are still people who would take that vibration and still use it for their own purposes, to against people and to rule the world. I can imagine, if some of these dictators were sanctified, then it would just, very, very different story. But of
Mm,
course, they won't be.
mm,
But then what will happen is that there will be, everyone else will say will be, and that's what will change these things. So that's
mm,
where people get deposed or removed, and things start to happen, basically, see, because that collectivity alters things. So yeah, so as you're all being sanctified, then and I know a lot of people would think, oh, suddenly I'm going to be glowing around in meditations or something, but it's just it's the awareness, the conscious awareness of what you are as source,
mm.
and therefore the ability you have to do something with it. But with that comes absolute responsibility
Yeah.
for who you are, and what you think and what you feel. So that's where, if there's still people who are making everything else responsible, then well, you're not going to be able to tap into that energy.
Mm,
So it's 100% responsible for, this is my life, this is who I am, this is where I stand, these are my thoughts. I've made all this happen, and that's going to be a hard bone to chew on when people look at some of the stuff they go through. But
yes.
but how can you change things if you don't? So, no question.
So I know, so talking into that, I know there are quite a lot of people that are struggling with mental health because of that struggle with maybe letting go of old ways, old patterns that once worked for them. They built their success upon that, and now
Mm,
they're just
mm, mm,
in
mm.
limbo or
Yeah,
in
yeah,
that
yeah,
in between because they can't
yeah,
move forward, and they
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
can't go back. What do we
yeah.
do in those spaces, Tabash? How can
Yeah,
we help?
well, yeah, well, what people do in those cases is that they have created a security based on their own vibrations and energies, and their belief in themselves as such, where when they look at to move forward, all they sense or feel is like a big blank. They want to change, they want to grow, they want to evolve, but then they're still so locked into their old stories that
Mm,
it just creates, mental health issues, physical health issues are just indicators of what I was saying before, vibrations that you're living by, that
mm,
are creating a tangle within you.
mm,
So what I was saying too before about honest formal closure is actually quite important here. And for
mm,
some, it will be quite an easy process because they're just in that space where they're able to do that. Others, they probably have to go a little bit deeper. And of course, therein lays the challenge to be able to face all of yourselves and not be adversely affected by that.
mm,
And,
mm.
who wants to go into a place where it makes you feel even more depressed? But if you're guided consciously with that, then you will be able to take that energy, bring it to the surface, and then expel it.
Mm.
But a lot of people don't want to go because they don't like the way it makes me feel, or people don't want the experience of needing to fix something. They just want to go from A to K, you know, and
They
and
don't want
and
to do
without
the
all the in
work.
between. Yeah, yeah, completely. And so, but that's the only way to evolve. But you have to 100% accept the position that you're in, even if you're feeling awful. You still have to
Mm,
accept with good grace. This is a place I'm in. This is the energy. This is what I could do with it.
mm,
And then this is where we come into, assist and guide, and so you're never alone in these types of situations. But I will stress what I said before about people who are in this state. Consistently do your formal closure, and
mm,
and but also don't overpick and prod at stuff. And of course, when people are very heavily involved in that, it does have a physical reaction.
mm.
So of course your natural chemistry can go all haywire. And then in some people's cases, they need the assistance of orthodox medicine So that's where they would take their pills or potions or whatever to be able to just balance things out, basically. But no physical body is here to maintain 24-hour medication. Your bodies can't sustain that, basically, and it just throws your system out so much, and then therefore people can only function on their pills. They can't function in reality. Remember, your system knows how to look after you if you know what to do. One more question, then I gotta go and bring Blair
One
back.
more question. Oh, it better be a goodie. When do this is a random one, Tabaash. When do you think we're going to have a connection with the Galactics?
Oh, that's been happening for decades.
When is everybody going to know about it then?
Not quite yet.
Not quite yet.
People are opening up that book, and in doing so, you're still being informed. And there are more and more people who are having literal experiences. And so that's building up the vibration and building up that energy. And so there's a lot of support that's being given to people, to the earth, as always. And that's been more evident, and people are more accepting of this. I mean, the theories in the past, they were never ever considered galactic interferences or assistances and all that sort of stuff, basically. But now they are. So they've been making TV programs about the building of the pyramids and, all that type of thing, and bringing in theories that wasn't something that was actually not of this world. And so you see, it's a process. It has to be a process. But, humans have to activate their inner intelligence to be able to adapt into this energy and into this concept. And look, I will always say everything is possible, but it depends on humanity. All right, all love and leave you. Blessings to you. Blessings. Oh, pleasure. Blessings to you all. And I look forward to seeing you again in the new year. The new formula, the new vibration, 2026 hertz. Okay, I'll bring Blair back. Okay, bye for now.
You.
Oh,
Wow.
hello.
Hello. Thank
How you doing? How was your session?
Beautiful as always, enlightening.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, sorry, a bit spacey going on here. So,
Absolutely.
hey, look, thank you for inviting me again. I really, really appreciate it. It's been wonderful, and look forward to connecting in the year to come. All right, lots of love. Thanks
Lots of love to you. Thank you so much.
Okay, cheers.
Enjoy the rest
Bye-bye.
of your
Bye.
day.
Thank you.
Bye.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye.
Amazing. As we come to the close of today's corridor, I want to take a moment to honor the depths we journeyed through together. The wisdom, the awareness, the expansion, and the gentle reminders of who we truly are beneath all the layers of this human experience. Blair, thank you for your incredible presence, your devotion to this work, and for bringing through the guidance of Tabaash with such clarity, humor, and heart. Your teachings continue to illuminate pathways for so many who are seeking truth, stability, and a deeper understanding of themselves in this ever-shifting world. And to you, listeners, thank you for choosing to spend this time with us. Every moment you invest in your own evolution contributes to the collective consciousness of humanity. Your willingness to grow, reflect, and open your mind is part of the very fabric of this new era we are stepping into. Whether you are navigating energetic shifts, exploring your soul intelligence, or simply learning how to be a little more aware today than you were yesterday, please know that you are not alone. We evolve together, we remember together, and we return to wholeness together. If today's conversation touched you, inspired you, or offered you even one new perspective, please like, share, follow, and subscribe. When you share this corridor, you help it reach someone who might be quietly waiting for a spark of light, and you never know whose path you may help illuminate just by passing this on. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. And until next time, keep returning to wholeness.